So I just finished bolting the chassis onto the jig for the second time, because right now we're going to be mounting the suspension. So the jig, both jigs, the chassis tubes and the suspension mounting points. So you can see here that chassis has got bolted down, and these members here are basically mocking up the points where the suspension lies. So this is going to be where our A-arms are mounted, and the lower A-arms will be on this bottom tube. So I have a jig point here. This is shock mounting up here. So this node is where the shock mount will be. So basically I had to wrestle this chassis into the jig, because after heating it and welding it, it must have shifted at least a little bit, because I think that's pretty normal. So I clamped it down to the table, and I got all my clamps on there. Next year I'm gonna have to do a little bit different design for the clamps, because I didn't make my outer radius big enough, and I constrained my bolt holes too much. They were way too exact. They didn't need that degree of precision. So I need to give myself more clearance on both the inner radius of the clamp there, because it's really close. Talking tens of thousands. So that needs to change. And then I think that a more efficient design for the suspension mounting, this one's actually alright. This is the rear H-arm mount. This is gonna work out pretty well. But a different design for the suspension mounting up front would allow me to keep the chassis in the jig and not have to remove it, because it was very difficult getting it back in. That took probably about 3 hours. So it shouldn't take that long. It should be really quick. And yeah, so there's the jig, there's the chassis. I learned a lot doing this project. It was a really big deal for me to be working on this frame. I love this project so much, and yeah, I learned a lot. Got some thinking to do for next year, but for the most part, I nailed it on this one. So it's a lot of work, but in the end, it saved us probably 2 weeks of time. We welded in 3 days as opposed to 3 weeks. So it took a little bit of time to assemble the jig, and took a lot of time for me to water jet it and write all these files, but in the end it worked out great. So feeling good.